Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist with Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I'm going to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Now, we know we certainly came off of a cold end of last week, and I thought it would just be good for us to take a look at this map. This comes from NCDC and NOAA, and it shows the typical last date of the spring freeze. Now, just remember, when you're looking at these data, we have to consider the fact that historically there's a large spread year to year on this. But when we look at the average dates, you can kind of just match up the colors here with what we see down in the color bar, which generally means it's a late March event or mid to late March event for much of the coastal regions, and then it gets more towards April and then even into May until you get to the higher elevations here in the Appalachian Mountains. So when I think about that, I go back to what we did get at the end of last week. So this would have been on April 2nd. We could see, you can tell pretty clearly on my maps where the break is here when you get temperatures below freezing. And so much of the western half of North Carolina, South Carolina, and then most of Virginia had a freezing temperature on the 2nd. And then on the 3rd, take a look at this. This is how far it extended here to the east. I mean, this is just cold air for us this time of year. Now, thinking about that, our last 7 days overall were cooler than normal, primarily due to what we had at the end of last week. But certainly things have changed quickly on the backside of this, and there's quite a bit of warmth that will be spreading in our direction as this colder air has finally moved to the east. And I'm going to talk about that to get us started here. So Monday's temperatures compared to normal here, the color shading again are the anomalies. Just take a look at this. So we have 70s today as we move throughout this week. There's Tuesday. Now we're in the mid to upper 70s. Getting into Wednesday, we could see in Raleigh maybe temperatures cracking the 80-degree mark. And the system that's coming through the midsection of the country really has a difficult time cooling things down. There's Thursday's high temperatures getting into Friday and now into next weekend. There's Saturday, even out into Sunday. There's a little cool down here, and I'll show you exactly what's going on in just a few moments. But much of the next 7 days will be featuring temperatures, well, at times well above normal. Let's just take a quick look at those overnight low temperatures just to make sure that we don't see anything that's below freezing. I've got this all the way out to next Sunday, which was that cooler day, and still, we're not seeing that. I'll walk you backwards, kind of an interesting way to do it, but you just notice that going throughout this week, we don't see those overnight low temperatures crawling at all down to that freezing mark again, which is good. Okay, so that was just a quick look at the temperatures. Let's do this now. Upper level flow pattern is going to be critical through the month of April. And what I'm going to be watching for most carefully is to see if any of our troughs, which again are showing up in these blue colors, all right, if any of those troughs are truly anchored to cold, cold air. Now, remember, we can get these late season cold snaps that come over here to the Carolinas, but it requires a very deep trough to be sitting in this area right here. Okay, that's what we're on the lookout for. Let's see if anything like that's going to happen. As we go forward here in the forecast, we see there is a low that's cutting through parts of the Midwest and heads up toward, the Great Lakes states. And then there's another trough that skirts. I'm just talking about these, kind of skirting here along the U.S.-Canada border, but nothing in the way of anchoring really, sustained cold air is showing up at all in this forecast. In fact, this large ridge that you see building into this region here, with the trough to the south of it out in the Atlantic, is really what's going to be dominating our temperature pattern. It's the wrong setup. We'd have to see a deep trough like this in this area, and it's just not showing up in the forecast. Now, I'll show you what that means in terms of precipitation in a moment, but over the next, 10 days out, well, this is day 5 through 10. You saw how warm it was this week. We still maintain that warmer bias moving forward. And part of this is because all of the coldest air is tucked away into Alaska. So if the cold air is there, you can't have it both in Alaska and across the plains and all the way down to the East Coast. It just doesn't. The wavelength of the flow of the atmosphere is not long enough to do that. So we need to watch to see if Alaska hangs on to this colder bias, and do these ridges keep pushing up toward the Hudson Bay. That's going to be critical. Now, European model sees the same thing. Okay, so when the cooler air comes in behind this next low, it's not as though it's cold. It's just some cooler air in place. This is where the coldest air seems to be anchored. So new map I want to start to show you. I know I probably should have had this earlier, but I just made it here early Monday morning. If there's gray on the map, this means that over the next 10 days, those places in gray will have a temperature that will be below freezing at some point, so below 32 Fahrenheit. Now, what I want you to see in this is for the corn and soybean farmers in the Carolinas, the insurance dates on when we can plant corn and soybeans in the Midwest here, they go up this week and early next week. So when we start to see this area not having sub-freezing temperatures, our soil temperatures are going to be relatively high, as you just saw. I expect very aggressive planting. Now, this is the European model. This is the GFS. Its sub-freezing line is much farther to the north. I mean, it's only part of the Dakotas, northern Minnesota, Wisconsin. So what I'm trying to say here is that if we can dodge the raindrops, this part of the Corn Belt will likely be making a lot of progress on some of the heat we're going to be having. So why don't we talk about rainfall, and then we'll do a quick comparison Midwest to the East Coast here too for us in the Carolinas. We're watching this system right here. It's a slow mover. It's coming through the it's coming through the northwest. It's going to get out here in the plains. And then instead of doing what we see a lot of these systems do, which is to race over to the east, not this system, it's coming out like this, and it's going to turn north pretty quickly. And what that's going to do is that's going to delay the return of rainfall for us over here in the Carolinas throughout this week. So we're going to be mild, and we're going to be relatively dry. If we look at where the severe weather threat is today, it's in the upper Midwest. Tomorrow, as we get into Tuesday the 6th, it now moves down into parts of, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and even into the day on Wednesday, it's now in the lower Mississippi River Valley. Does this ever extend over toward us? Well, let's try to get that question answered. High resolution modeling, we're going to do this fast. Ready? High pressure's in place. And as we go through the day on Monday, now into the day here on Tuesday, and getting into the day here on Wednesday, you can see that high pressure is what's keeping us on the warmer side of things and on the drier side of things. But we have this upper level low feature where the surface low is here, the upper level low is on the northern side of it. And we're going to see this basically get flung out ahead of it to the north, head up to the upper Midwest, stalling the return of rainfall for us over in the Carolinas. Let me show you what I mean. Here's the European model. As we go through the day on Monday, now into the day on Tuesday, and then into the day on Wednesday and Thursday. There it is. There's the low we were just talking about. What you notice here is that we may not see a chance at precip out of this until maybe some scattered showers, maybe scattered thunderstorm on Thursday night. But it doesn't appear that the severe weather threat on Wednesday here is going to be moved over toward us on Thursday. Now, I'm watching this all week. It's just at this particular point, I don't think we're going to really move into a major risk of severe weather toward the end of this week. Storms, yes, we could see them, but I'm not so overly concerned about severe weather at this point. We need to watch it all week, though, okay? As we go forward, that low, like I said, wraps up here. And then on Friday, the storms really blow up here from, as you can see, from South Carolina. Whoops, sorry about that. From South Carolina all the way down along the Gulf Coast. Could we get some scattered showers and storms here toward the end of the week? I do think we could. But as we keep moving forward with this, it may not be until the weekend, this is Saturday evening, getting into next Sunday, that we could possibly get a front to sweep through our area, increasing our chances for storms. So we're going to have to just watch the end of this week and this weekend for the chances for storms to return to our area. Now let's take that and let's put it all together. I'm going to show you total accumulated precip for the whole country. So here we are through Tuesday, now through the day on Wednesday. Remember our first chance Thursday for some scattered showers and storms. Then we had another chance coming in, Friday night, into the day on Saturday and Sunday. But overall, as I work all the way out, our total precipitation amounts here for the Carolinas, through the next week are relatively light. And that's what we're seeing here. So I can put it out there and show it to you in terms of precipitation anomalies. It's not until the weekend that this starts to move in. So we're going to have to see how much precip we do get by that time frame. And at this point, we're looking at a dry week up until the systems arrive this weekend. That's what we're watching for most carefully. Just a couple other things to point out here. The Mid-South, which needs more drier conditions. Now, it's a bigger area than the Mid-South, but we need more drier conditions in here, and we're going to see more rainfall. So the lower Mississippi River Valley, this is an area we expect to be planted very quickly. It's been delayed. Tennessee has been delayed. We've had all the severe weather through the northern states of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. And the drought conditions that we're still seeing in the north and west, this is not enough precipitation to undo the problems that we're having in parts of North and South Dakota, just as a point here. All right, so let's just keep that all in mind. And the west, the split flow is keeping things relatively dry. From there, I just want to show you the difference between that and the GFS. So here's the European. the GFS is actually much drier for you overall when you think about these weekend systems. So the wettest of our models is the European at this point. Okay, going out there now into week 2, there's a major model discrepancy we need to discuss. I'm going to show you the GFS because its flow wants to drop a trough into the Four Corner States and run a ridge up over us, keeping this big ridge here with a trough to its south. Now, what's the significance of that? The significance is if the trough is aligned in this area, it'll be this region we expect to see more of the shower and thunderstorm activity, and we would have a drier go of it. The European model wants to drop that trough there. Now, here's the difference. The European model has week 2 wetter for us along the coast versus the GFS, a little different color bar, but same thing. GFS has all the wetter weather and the stormier weather inside this area. So I'm going to tell you with the uncertainty between the two models at this point, we're just kind of a lot that we need to watch as we go into week 2, which means next week's video will be critical for us to understand next week's precipitation pattern. But I don't think I'm telling anybody anything new there. Overall, the new GFS forecasting system has been improving in its accuracy, which is why we're starting to consider it more right now. Let's come back, though, to the temperature pattern. Even out here, day 10 through 15, if we have a trough there or if we have a trough here, just remember what I said earlier. None of these are anchored to super cold air. So when you see some cooler weather coming through, I'm not talking about another risk of a frost event at this point for the Carolinas like we saw last weekend. If there's cooler air, it's just that. It's cooler. It's not cold. Okay, from there, let's just take a look at the European. Like I said, trough farther to the east, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees cooler than normal from the Mid-South through the Ohio River Valley over toward the Carolinas. That, again, would be the time period of like the 15th of April through the 20th. But to be 5 degrees cooler than normal then still has our temperatures in the upper 60s to lower 70s, if not even warmer than that, okay? Beyond that, let's look at a few other things. The MJO. Now, really quickly, I'm going to draw a line right here. This is phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, what we have to be concerned about is if the MJO, which is forecast to do this, see the squiggly lines there? If it pops out into phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is over the Indian Ocean, historically, that's correlated with cooler weather for us. But you know what the MJO is forecast to do through April? It's supposed to stay up there. This is the long-range outlook all the way through May the 5th, and it just stays here and kind of gets trapped and stuck, not forecast to pop out down here. So what do we watch? If the forecast changes and it comes over into the Indian Ocean, phases 2 and 3, well, then we have some cooler risks ahead. Not frost, but cooler risks ahead. It's tending to favor this more, well, Western Pacific view. And as a consequence of that, take a look at this. This is what what CPC just released. Above average temperatures across the southern plains getting over here and equal chances for us, meaning more normal temperatures. And it's also forecasting drier in through this area. I don't buy this, though. And I'll tell you why, okay? This is what the European model says all the way out to the 3rd week. Dropping a trough from Alaska into the Gulf of Alaska. A little bit of ridging overall on the heights here, but the flow is doing something like this. Now with that flow pattern, trough here, ridge in place there, and a trough in place here. This is not a strong signal for above average temperatures. In other words, not hot, but it's also not a dry signal for this area either. Let me show you what I mean. European model, temperature pattern into week 3. Again, can you see that the warmth is primarily going to be, well, to the south of those two lines? I know you see some warmer conditions in through here, but this is why I'd give this equal chances on being near average, really, to be honest with you. But it's the precipitation signal that I told you I don't agree with. You see, the European model is favoring, well, above average precipitation for much of the eastern part of the United States from the Mississippi River and the Ohio River east. And that tends to be the scenario here. So while we are warming up in our pattern, I do not see a strong signal for it to point toward dry. That's what I want to tell you. I don't see a dry April pattern evolving. Now, since we're talking about these longer term views of things, let's now take a look at this map. Now, this is probably one of our most critical maps to be paying attention to over the next several weeks. I saw cooling over the last week in the Gulf of Alaska. We maintained the cooler water into this area. And again, my concern about this, for you corn and soybean farmers in the Carolinas, we are very much worried about this pattern in the Midwest. And the reason why, the cold water in place here is a part of that negative Pacific meridional mode we've talked about. And that just signals drought in the midsection of the United States. La Nina's gone. It's faded. Its Southern Oscillation Index is 0. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I see more cool water right there. Well, what I'll tell you is that cool water just surfaced lately, and there's a lot of warm water underneath it. This is the South American side. This is the Australian side over here. And the line that runs across the top of this image is the ocean surface. So this is going down, all right? There's a lot of warm water here. And that cool water that just surfaced is going to be temporary. No, this is not the return of El Nino. But what it tells me is enso-neutral conditions are likely. So we come back to one thing here, and that is as I look at these ocean temperature patterns, I'll be very concerned to see if that warms up. That's going to be it. Now we're going to stop here because I get all brand new long-range forecast data tomorrow. I'll get the rest of the week to analyze it, and on Monday's report next week, I look forward to delivering you that new forecast. We're going to look out 7 months, okay? Sit tight, we'll get it to you. I appreciate your attention this week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.